Well, we know Australia's population is ageing, but the fact is a third of Australia's population is now over the age of 50, and this group is only growing. But our experience of ageing differs dramatically, depending on whether you enjoy the company of loving family and friends and some financial security. Today, the Council of the Ageing will release a landmark State of the Older Nation report. This is the most comprehensive national study ever undertaken on the views of Australians aged over 50. A key finding of that report is that while the vast majority feel considerably younger than they actually are, many also don't feel that their experience is valued by society. Ian Yates is the CEO of COTA. He joins me in our Parliament House studios. Ian, welcome back to breakfast.
Thank you, Fran.
Before we get to the findings, just briefly the mechanics of this survey. How many older Australians did you speak to?
This is over 2,500 older Australians throughout the country. This is a properly statistically valid survey that reaches out into the diversity of older Australia and with a very high accuracy rate in the responses.
It's very broad and the findings incredibly interesting, I think. Happily, and the finding that struck me, the majority of people over 50 feel considerably younger. In fact, they feel 10 years younger. What's influencing that? What's behind that sentiment?
Look, I think what we're seeing is that the images we have of being older, including the ones we're carrying around in our heads, we don't feel like that anymore. And people are active, involved in their communities, involved in volunteering, involved in their families, and making a major contribution. So they don't fit easily with society's image of what they are at that age. And that's a good thing. On the other hand, the fact that they feel undervalued doesn't surprise us, but is still a great worry.
So 40% feel undervalued. Do you think those two figures might come up to meet each other a bit better, that if you're feeling younger and more vibrant, that will ultimately change preconceptions, and that might change how people are valued? Is that a simple truth of our society?
I think that certainly helps, but I think it's complex. What we think is that we need a range of measures, for example, by governments to tackle this too. This report confirms what we know from lots of sources, that age discrimination is still rife out there. Indeed, another recent survey showed that about 30% of employers admit to using age in their selection criteria, even though it's actually illegal.
I want to come back to work in a moment, but just to get to the sentiments you unearthed, you asked people to put into words what it is that makes them feel positive or negative about their quality of life. Here's a sample. One says, "My finances are stable. I'm happily married to my second wife." Another says, "I'm alone and live week to week." These are the two extremes, I suppose, of the sentiment. How do these statements resonate with you in terms of the overall results?
They show us that within the overall picture of a positive ageing, there's a great degree of vulnerability. So roughly half of older Australians have some level of vulnerability.
And what that means when we say high level of vulnerability, you list indicators of that: unemployment, having a household income of $30,000 per year, or living with a disability.
Yeah.
So half of Australians over 50 have one of those vulnerabilities. That's very high, isn't it?
Absolutely, and some of them will have more than that, of course. And what that means, an example of that, if you drill down, is that if you're not working, so you're either unemployed or you're receiving a pension, and you're in the private rental market, then you're very vulnerable, and more of those people are women than men.
Okay, so financial vulnerability, we've talked before about needs to raise the pension, we've talked before about superannuation changes. I mean, are those the keys to people feeling more financially secure?
They are, but also so is the participation rate, employment participation rate leading up to retirement, if that's what we're talking about. Because if you're actually struggling with employment in later working life, then you're going to be worse off in retirement. So.
Well, your survey is stark on that too. You find that more than a quarter of people in paid employment want more paid work. 1 in 5 have experienced age discrimination, and 29% of working older Australians don't expect they will ever retire. So that's quite a high degree of people, older Australians, who want to keep working, and some for a very long time. How much of that is due to finances and needing to work? How much of that is due to what we were talking about earlier, which is the notion that you feel younger, more vibrant, and therefore you want to keep working?
We are still drilling down into the detail of this, but both of those factors are true. I mean, it's been a big issue for older people in Australia for many years to get rid of the barriers to keep working, because many people say, why should I stop? On the other hand, what we do know is that with volatile employment, many people need to keep working because they don't have enough accumulated for the retirement years.
And in terms of that age discrimination you mentioned earlier, is that changing? I think I've probably been talking to you about this for 20 years, Ian, and governments have been talking about it and bringing in strategies. Have we seen any change, any improvement?
Other indications in this report recently have shown us that we are seeing improvement, but it's still far too high. Particularly, as you say, 1/3 of Australians are older than 50, and yet we're still regarding them as some kind of second-class citizen in many cases. So it is time that employers shifted. There was an initiative in the government's More Choices for Longer Life package that Kay Patterson is heading up to make another effort in this area. But employers got to wake up to the fact that in the next 10 years or so, their workforce is going to be shrinking, and if they don't have older people, they'll be in strife.
Well, maybe it's going to be a simple tipping point will make the difference.
Yeah.
It's 3 minutes to 7. Our guest is Ian Yates, CEO of the Council on the Ageing. Health was the major answer to the question, of a poor quality of life. What's the issue there? The issue for so many people you surveyed was health. By the same token, a very high number of older people do not have health insurance, private health insurance, because they can't afford it. In the health questions, what's your major takeout from that?
The biggest single issue that people have trouble accessing is oral and dental health, and that's been a claim we've making out of government. There are 3 real claims out of government. A more comprehensive strategy, which is what the More Choices package started, but are we going to see that continue in the next budget and so on? Oral and dental health programs for older people, and we've been talking about that for 20 years too. And then, of course, substantially increasing rent assistance for people vulnerable in that area.
Okay, so dental health is something that could make a significant difference. Government putting more funding into public dental health. Absolutely.
We totally underestimate the importance of dental health to our overall health and well-being, and even to things like social isolation. If I don't have good teeth, I might not want to be out and about as much.
So not much of an outlay could make a major difference there.
It is pretty significant outlay, but it would make a big difference, and it actually would cut back expenditure in other areas of health.
And Ian, there is one clear bit of low-hanging fruit here, I think. Your survey found that over half of Australians 50 and above don't do the recommended amount of weekly exercise, 30 minutes a day, and over 1/3 are doing less than 1 hour of exercise per week. Now, that's an area where a simple change could presumably make a significant difference on a whole lot of these determinants.
Yes, certainly, and we, the Council on the Ageing, are part of trying to improve that. Government has a new program as part of the More Choices package trying to improve that, but it also interacts with things like social isolation, and if people don't go out, then they don't exercise.
But a good, strong public health strategy
would be
with some funding might assist that.
More exercise, more strength training, these things would make a big difference.
Major difference. Congratulations on the report. I think there's a lot in it, and good luck with the lobbying ahead. Ian Yates, thank you.
Thank you, Fran.
Ian Yates is CEO of the Council of the Ageing, releasing this State of the Older Nation report. It makes really interesting reading.